Okay, Mr. Osterloh, Mr. Gardner, you're here. All your people present and ready?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioner Matthews.
I think Commissioner Matthews won't make this one.
Oh, she won't? Okay.
That's right.
All right, then. We're ready to go. We're now on the record in case number 2020-00190, electronic application of Horseshoe Bend Solar LLC for a certificate of construction for an approximately 60 megawatt merchant electric solar generating facility in Greene County, Kentucky. My name is Michael Schmidt. I'm chairman of the Kentucky Public Service Commission and also serve as chairman for the Kentucky State Board on Electric Generation and Transmission Siting. I will be presiding today. Joining me via video conferencing are the other 6 siting board members, who are Kent Chandler, Vice Chairman of the Public Service Commission. Dr. Talina Matthews apparently will not be present this morning, but will later watch this hearing so that she will participate in the final decision. John Lyons, Deputy Secretary of the Energy and Environment Cabinet, serving as proxy for Secretary Rebecca Goodman. Charlie Rowland, Executive Advisor with the Cabinet for Economic Development, serving as proxy for Interim Secretary Larry Hayes. Greene County Judge Executive John Frank, first ad hoc appointee, and Paul Jim Sidebottom, second ad hoc appointee. At this time, I would normally caution attendees to please set your cellular phones to silent mode or turn them off. Due to the current state of emergency in Kentucky, the siting board is hosting this hearing via video conferencing. Since this continues to be a learning experience for everyone, there are a few suggestions I would offer. In addition to the normal courtesies regarding cell phones, these tips may help with clarity and avoid feedback issues for the video conference hearing. Mute your microphone if you are not speaking. Attorneys, when interjecting, please state your name so the video record is clear. If you use a phone for the audio and a computer for the video, turn off the computer audio. Otherwise, there will be feedback. If you are in a room with several people on their own computers, turn off the computer audio for all but one computer. Otherwise, there will be feedback. If another participant is in a nearby office, close the doors between the offices. Sound carries further than one thinks, which can cause feedback. Once in the GoToMeeting software platform, go to your settings. Icon looks like a gear to ensure the microphone setting is on the microphone you are using. There's a pull-down menu feature in GoToMeeting settings that will list the available microphones. Use wired headphones or wired earbuds for better sound quality. Wired is preferred because wireless devices may lose power depending upon the length of the hearing. Keep a charger nearby in case your battery runs low. And please alert the siting board if you are experiencing technology failure that prevents your participation at any time in the proceedings. Attorneys should contact staff at the previously provided cell phone number. The hearing today is for the purpose of taking evidence on Horseshoe Bend Solar's application requesting a certificate of construction for a 60 megawatt merchant electric generating solar facility to be located in Greene County, Kentucky. At this time, we'll have entry of appearances for counsel. Given the unique challenges of conducting a video hearing, I will also request that each party's counsel also identify their witnesses at this time. For the applicant, Horseshoe Solar, would counsel please identify themselves and their client and the witnesses who are present here this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of Horseshoe Bend Solar LLC, my name is Todd Osterloh. Also with me is Jim Gardner with the Sturgill Turner Law Firm out of Lexington. Our witnesses here today are Carson Harkrader, the CEO, Solly Van Meter, who's done a lot of community outreach for this program and project, and Dr. Paul Coombs, a professor emeritus at the University of Louisville, who has submitted the economic impact report for this matter.
Thank you. And for Siding Board staff?
Juan Nguyen, Your Honor, and Cornelius Mance on behalf of Siding Board staff.
Having checked the record, it looks like the public notice has been given. Is that correct, Mr. Osterloh?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Now, we have, I guess, outstanding motions that I've seen are for confidentiality and a motion for deviation. Are there any other motions outstanding, Mr. Osterloh, to your knowledge?
None, no.
Now, we have always, before these hearings begin or the testimony begins, we have a public comment section, but we've changed the mode a little bit. So what we've done is we requested that public comments must be requested at least 30 minutes prior to the start of the hearing. And as I understand it, no one has requested the opportunity to comment. But for members of the public who may be watching this hearing, you may email any comments that you would like in writing to the Public Service Commission, and please go to our website at psc.ky.gov. Now, at this time, Mr. Osterloh, would you please call your first witness?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first witness will be Carson Harkrader.
Okay, Mr. Hartrader, would you please raise your right hand? Oh, okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. I think you're on mute, Ms. Hartrader. You probably need to unmute.
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Osterloh, you may ask.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carson, would you please state your name for the record?
Yes, it is Carson Harkrader.
And what is your affiliation with Carolina Solar Energy?
I am the CEO and owner.
And what's your business address?
It is 400 West Main Street, Suite 503, Durham, North Carolina, 27701.
Can you describe your role and maybe the relationship between Carolina Solar Energy and this Horseshoe Bend solar project?
Yes, my company, Carolina Solar Energy, has been the owner and developer of the Horseshoe Bend project since its inception.
Great. And what information would you like to convey to the Siding Board today?
Great, thanks, Todd. I probably have 5 or 6 minutes of comments. And so I'll get started. Good morning, Chairman Schmidt, and members of the Siding Board. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present at this public meeting. I want to touch on a few points this morning, and of course, I'll be available for questions afterwards. It's a pleasure to be here today. My team has put countless hours into this project over the last 2.5 years, and I'm very happy to be here today to talk about it with you. My company, Carolina Solar Energy, was founded by my father, and we've been in business since 2004. We have developed 45 solar projects that are in operation, about 500 megawatts of operating solar. We have developed 8 projects that are of the same size as Horseshoe Bend and that are in operation or some of them are in construction in North Carolina and Virginia. My company does not operate projects long-term. We partner with other companies who will build and operate the projects. Our specialty is in choosing optimal sites for solar projects, working with our landowners, the neighbors and local communities, doing permitting, interconnection studies, environmental reviews, title searches, surveys. We do everything that's necessary to get a solar project like this ready to go into construction. And our scope of work typically follows a 2 to 3 year timeline. We then remain involved with our landowners and local authorities through our personal relationships with them whenever they have questions or need anything from us as the project moves forward. As I mentioned, Carolina Solar Energy was founded by my father. I took over the business from him 3 years ago. And one of the first decisions I made when I did that was to look into developing new solar projects in Kentucky. As you know, parts of Kentucky, including Greene County, where this project is located, are part of the PJM interconnection region. And within PJM, solar projects can contract directly with large energy buyers via private contract. There's quite a lot of demand from large energy buyers for energy from projects like Horseshoe Bend. And I'm very confident that the energy and green credits from this Horseshoe Bend project will be purchased by a company with operations in Kentucky. My company first started looking at Greene County in the spring of 2019, about 2 years ago. And my employee, Chris Jones, first met with Judge Frank that summer. We very much want to thank Judge Frank for his thoughtful consideration of this project and all the questions that he and his staff have asked us as my team has gotten to know him. I also really want to take a moment to thank the Siting Board and the staff for your consideration of this project. I've been in the solar business for almost 10 years, and we know working in this business that we are bringing something new. It takes a lot of time and a lot of energy for regulators to get up to speed on a new industry like solar, on top of all the other busy workloads and schedules that you're managing. So I just want to say thank you. We appreciate we are bringing something new that is adding a lot to your plates, which I'm sure we're very full already. On a personal basis, it's very rewarding for me to work in the solar industry. I feel I can help bring economic development, new tax base, and new jobs to areas that really need it. I hope that this work is rewarding for you as well. And I do think these projects like Horseshoe Bend will be very positive for Kentucky and that they will provide a needed service to the Kentucky companies that have decided to buy renewable energy and allow them to buy that energy in Kentucky. So I want to take a moment and talk about the pilot agreement for this project, the payment in lieu of taxes. I'm very happy to share that the Greene County Fiscal Court approved Horseshoe Bend's proposed pilot payment and industrial revenue bond a week ago on April 15th. The approved pilot payment was a little bit higher than the payments we referenced in our Siting Board application, and we have some information we'll share on that so that you have all the numbers. So just to confirm, the pilot for the project is approved, and the Greene County Fiscal Court reviewed the project recently and voted for that approval. And as you know, there is no planning and zoning in Greene County, so we did not get a local zoning permit, but we greatly appreciated the county's support for the project through their approval of the industrial revenue bond and the pilot. I also want to mention workforce development. Since we know that economic development is part of what the Siting Board considers in these cases. My team has been meeting with the local vocational schools near our projects for a number of months. We've met with the principal of the Greene County Technical School, and I'm planning to make a trip to Kentucky in the next few months to meet in person with the Greene County Technical School and other vocational schools near our Kentucky projects, and bring them information about the training programs and the specific skills that are required in order to work installing solar projects. I will also bring some funding to help the schools develop and present these programs to their students. It is my great hope that this will help increase the number of local workers that are prepared and ready to work on the construction and installation of Horseshoe Bend. There are just two more quick items I want to cover. One is noise and the other is setbacks. I know that the Siting Board is concerned about noise. I am really hopeful that you will be able to visit an operating solar project soon so that you can see and hear for yourself what it is like. From my experience, I can personally vouch that I have heard of multiple neighbors of rural solar projects who say that as a neighbor, as an adjacent neighbor of the project, they love it. It's quiet. They know that nothing else, no other development is going to come in and sit right next to their home. They prefer it to a residential neighbor because it gives them that quiet rural lifestyle and they know what to expect. I know though that it makes all the difference to see this for yourselves, and I hope you have that opportunity soon. If you're able to come to North Carolina, we will be very happy to organize a tour of one of the projects that we developed here that's in operation. I am sorry we don't have anything closer to Frankfurt, but I'm hoping something will be worked out soon. And lastly, I wanted to talk about our setbacks. This particular project, Horseshoe Bend, is one of the most, if not the most hidden and setback solar projects of this size that I have seen. As you know from our application, we have only 2 neighbors that live within 300 feet of the project. And there is one small neighborhood that sits 600 feet away and whose view of the project is buffered by topography, a small hill that blocks the view. The project will be virtually invisible from Highway 218 and will be visible from only short stretches of some very small county roads. Looking for a solar project that has a minimal impact on the neighboring community, I think it would be hard to find one that is more hidden and set back than Horseshoe Bend, and I hope you agree. So that concludes my remarks. I am available for questions, and Todd, I think you might have a question for me too.
Right, yeah, if we can go back and maybe touch on the pilot agreement that was approved. You mentioned it was approved last Thursday by the fiscal court, correct?
April 15th, correct.
Okay, and you've drafted a summary page about that pilot, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes, the
Mr.
summary
Chairman-
page, yeah, it includes the new payment amounts that are slightly higher than what was in our application.
And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to share my screen to show what that page looks like and introduce it as Exhibit 1 to this hearing.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
And it should be popping up relatively soon. Carson, if you could let me know when you see that.
Yes, I can see it, Todd, thank you.
And is it legible on your screen?
Yes,
Okay. Can you walk the siting board through what they can see here?
sure. So what this basically says, we've tried to make this calculation of the pilot very straightforward. In the first 20 years of operation of the solar project, the pilot payment, the payment in lieu of taxes, will be $1,000 per megawatt. So with a 60 megawatt project of Horseshoe Bend, that'll be $60,000 per year. For the second 20 years of operation years 21 to 40, the payment is $350 per megawatt. So that will be $21,000 per year. And then in the second sort of section of numbers, you can see that the total payments for years 1 through 20 will be $1.2 million. And the total pilot payments for years 21 to 40 will be $420,000, resulting, assuming this project operates for a 40-year lifespan, a total county new pilot payments of $1.62 million, with an average payment of $40,500 per year over the 40 years.
Okay.
And at the bottom, we have calculated the current property tax payments that are being made on these parcels. Obviously, this is rural land that has some tax discounts for being agricultural land, and so the total tax payments currently are about $6,500 per year on all the parcels that are in the project.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I believe that's all the questions that I have for Ms. Harkrader. She's available for questions from staff and siting board.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nguyen, cross-examination?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Ms. Harkrader, can you hear me okay?
Yes, hi, Quan.
Okay, good. I know you described generally the background of Carolina Solar and the various solar projects that Carolina Solar has been involved in. Can you speak a little bit more about Carolina Solar Energy's business philosophy as it relates to community outreach and how Carolina Solar Energy interacts with the community where it's developed solar facilities?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Our philosophy when it comes to community engagement is to outreach proactively to the community. Typically, and unfortunately we were a little bit limited with that in this project due to COVID, but typically for all of our projects, our philosophy is that there will be public meetings that are required. And we also typically have a dinner for the neighbors of our projects where we invite them to come, share a meal, get to know us personally, and just have a chance to, in a comfortable setting, ask us their questions. Unfortunately, we were not able to have that neighbor dinner for this project due to COVID. Our meeting was, our public meeting that we had for the siting board was both in person and virtual. But what we did instead was, and Solly Van Meter, who's here in the meeting, he went proactively and met with one of the neighbors who lives closest to this project. As I mentioned before, there's really not many people that live very close to the project, but we did proactively go out and meet with one neighbor. What we find is that it's very important for people to have a chance to ask us questions and to get to know us. as I mentioned, solar energy is something new, and people do have a lot of questions about it. And we certainly feel as a company that it's part of our mission to help people learn about solar, ask us whatever's on their mind, and for us to have the chance to provide information. So that's our company philosophy on outreach, and we tend to do it fairly proactively.
Okay. In terms of and you mentioned that Carolina Solar has 45 solar projects that are currently in operation, and then there are 8 that are either in development or in operation that are similar to the size of Horseshoe Bend, 60 megawatts?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you provide examples of how Carolina Solar has worked with nearby non-participating landowners who have raised concerns about either noise or visual impacts related to a Carolina Solar solar facility, and how Carolina Solar has addressed those concerns?
Sure, I'd be happy to. One case that is actually before the siting board is our Glover Creek project, which is in Metcalfe County. We had a neighbor at that project who actually came to our neighborhood dinner. And when they arrived at the dinner, they told us that they lived adjacent to the project and that they were concerned about the view of the solar project from their home. And so we spoke with them at the dinner. We answered, questions that they had about solar technology. And with that particular neighbor, because they had concerns, we actually met with them the next day at their home. We asked them if we, could come to their home, and they invited us. This was before COVID. This was back in 2019. We got in a car with them. We drove around the entire perimeter of their property. We brought our site plan in a large format. We talked with them about what their view would be from their home. They realized that various trees were going to buffer their view of the solar project. We also talked with them about their interests, and it turned out this particular family had a lot of interest in pollinators and birds and butterflies and hummingbirds. They had hummingbird feeders all over their property, and so we agreed with them to place the pollinator species that we were planning to plant, that we had designed to be planted in the project, to place it on the setbacks around their property so that they could benefit from, seeing the birds and butterflies and hummingbirds that would come to those pollinators. So that was one example of how we worked with a neighboring family. I think in one of our questions and answers, I'm not sure if it was on this project or another project, I talked about an example where one of our projects in North Carolina had a church that was the farm that the project sat on was part of a parcel that had been in this family for generations, and at some stage they had carved out a parcel for a church, and the church's playground was right in the back, and they had all their social areas right around the church. And so for that particular church, we met with the pastor, we met with the church leaders, and spoke with them about the project, asked them what they would like to see. And we ended up there placing slats in the security fence around the perimeter of the project that kind of surrounded the church property on 3 sides. We planted an enhanced vegetative buffer to ensure that they would be looking at a nice new vegetative buffer instead of the solar project, which was their preference. And so those are just examples of how, when neighbors do come to us with concerns, our goal is to work with them to make sure they're comfortable, to come up with different solutions that will solve their concerns and make sure that they're happy with the solar farm as their neighbor.
Okay. So were there any issues related to particularly noise during construction from any of the projects that's been developed by Carolina Solar, issues raised by nearby property owners during the construction process?
Yeah, I did ask my dad about this. As I mentioned, he founded our company. I did not get specific examples from him. He did say, I think, that there had been a couple of times where neighbors were frustrated by, traffic during construction, or I did not hear about noise in particular. I do a lot of policy work here in North Carolina and work presenting in front of counties that have already permitted solar projects, that have operating solar projects. I have not heard noise during construction or operation raised as a concern. The main concern that we hear is just neighbors saying, oh, this is going to be something new. What is it going to look like? Can you buffer it?
Okay. So, are there 36 non-participating landowners, nearby landowners, that are adjacent to the Horseshoe Bend facility?
Okay, let me pull that up. I'm going to pull up the real estate impact study, which is where we listed all the neighbors. The number of neighboring properties in the real estate study for Horseshoe Bend is actually 50, but a number of those are duplicates. So that may be the correct number. I'm sorry, I don't have that.
That's okay, it's subject to check. I believe you mentioned that in the application.
Okay.
Where you, the company filed or submitted, mailed out notices to nearby landowners regarding the public
Okay.
meeting.
So
For those non-participating adjacent landowners, did Carolina Solar reach out to those landowners to determine if those landowners had any issues, either noise or visual issues that they would have with respect to the solar facility? Understand that there are two very close residences that Carolina Solar has been in contact with and has reached out to, but as to the others, has Carolina Solar reached out to those other adjacent non-participating landowners to obtain whether they have any issues with respect to noise or visual impact?
So looking at, so we did not proactively reach out to we reached out to one adjacent landowner who will have a view of the project and is located directly adjacent within 300 feet. We did not reach out proactively to the other neighbors surrounding the project, other than mailing them the notice for the public meeting, and then also mailing them a certified mail copy and a regular mail copy of the notice of application. However, this project was covered by the local newspaper, which showed a image of our site plan in the local newspaper. And our landowners, a number of these landowners actually live right here on the properties, and we know that they've been upfront with their neighbors about the project. And so to answer your question directly, no, we did not reach out directly personally to any of the other neighbors other than mailing them the letters.
Okay.
I did want to mention, just looking at our site plan, for the folks, for example, who live on Jim Meadows Road, there's a sort of a stream that goes between Jim Meadows Road and our array area that is not within our potential project footprint. So there's quite a large, which will remain treed, with timber, vegetative buffer there. And the other neighbors, this particular project is just really, really incredibly set back from, as I mentioned, Highway 218 and even from Jim Meadows Road.
Okay. And then if I can refer you to Horseshoe Solar's response to Siting Board staff's second request for information, item number 1.
Okay. Second RFI?
Yes.
Okay, and the siding board.
Let me try to bring that up as well.
Okay, regarding sound?
Yes. Give me 1 second here. Let me try to share the response as well. Okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So with respect to the construction noise, the response indicates that the closest, the response indicated that the loudest noise during the construction process would be the pile driving process. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that will generate a noise level of about 91 decibels at 150 feet. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And for this facility, Horseshoe Bend proposes that all of the solar equipment will be at least 150 feet setback from nearby residential homes. Is that correct as well?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned that if I can scroll down here, at the bottom of this page, it says that therefore the amount of time that a neighboring residence will experience pile driving sound at Horseshoe Bend at 150-foot distance will be very limited. Much shorter period of time than the full construction period or even the overall pile driving period, likely as short as 1 day. So do you anticipate for those property owners that are about 150 feet away, they'll just experience the pile driving work for, at the very most, about a day?
That is my expectation. In our application, the attachment F to the site assessment report, the noise and traffic study has a table on page 2. Yeah, so for 150 feet away, it shows the pile driving noise being 91. At 200 feet, it's 88.5 dBA, and at 300 feet, it goes down to 85 dBA. And certainly, I think regulating construction noise on a solar project is certainly challenging. It's actually not something that we're used to seeing being regulated. And so I think, I appreciate that the siting board is taking a very careful approach to this. And I also appreciate that 95 dBA, sounds very loud. The way that solar farms are installed, before this hearing, I was actually just Googled like time-lapse video of solar project installation. And I think the link that was in this response here shows one row of solar panels being installed and the rack installation process. But if you watch these videos of the time-lapse, you can see, it's not like a typical construction site where someone's building a house or a building and it's right in one spot and it's going to be right there for 6 months. Obviously this project is spread out over numerous acres. And so the pile driving process, starts and it flows. And the process of installing the panels onto the racks is a fairly silent process. I'm not going to say it's completely silent, but the pile driving process, which creates the most noise, really does move along. There's no, as we know, the posts are pounded into the ground. There's no long process of digging or putting concrete or anything like that. The benefit, of course, of the fact that these piles are driven into the ground and not instead sunk into concrete, which might be a quieter process, but then you'd end up with a field of concrete that couldn't be necessarily very easily used again for agriculture or whatever other use. the fact that they're piled in does create some noise temporarily, but is also a great benefit to the land, and that it makes it much easier to return the land to agricultural or another use. But to answer your question, yes, the pile driving process is a fluid process. The install teams move throughout the site and would not be just sitting in one spot for, days or weeks at a time. They're going to finish installing that pile and they're going to move on to the next one fairly quickly. And there's, like I said, there's numerous videos online that you can see, time-lapse solar installation, and you can watch that process. Some of those videos are going to be from obviously other states, desert conditions. One of the reasons we chose the video that was linked in this answer is because it's being installed on grass, and that's the typical installation process we expect in Kentucky. So that's just a nice way to see that, it's just going into the grass, and then the grass will remain for erosion control assistance.
Okay.
Did I fully answer your question?
Yes, to an extent. So are there two homes that are that would be within that 150 feet distance for this particular project?
Yes. There's one, as you all know, this project kind of makes almost a U shape. There's one home that's sort of in the bottom of the U, and then there's one home that's on the sort of eastern side. That particular parcel sort of cuts into the parcels that make up the solar project. So those two homes are within 300, will likely both be within 150 feet of panels.
Okay. And is there any expectation from Carolina Solar to reach out to those property owners or any nearby property owners, in advance of the construction process, which would generate the most noise, such as the pile driving process, to let those property owners know of the potential for a noise disturbance as a result from that particular construction process?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me look and make sure. Yes, okay. So in our site assessment report, section 4, I'm going to go back into that. It's in section 6, mitigation measures. These are our proposed mitigation measures, siting board conditions, and then that refers to section 4, where we've proposed, yes, that at or prior to the commencement of construction, we should send a letter, actually not just to neighboring property owners, but to property owners within 1,500 feet of the property boundary, notifying them that the facility will be in construction and providing them with a point of contact that they can call or email if they have questions or concerns regarding construction noises or other impacts. So yes, that is part of our proposed mitigation.
Okay, and will Carolina Solar or Horseshoe Bend Solar LLC commit to work with any of those property owners that would raise any sort of complaints or issues with respect to noise or visual impact during the construction process?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think, what we would prefer is that the regulation itself be clear as to the decibel level that we, need to meet in order to meet our permit conditions. But certainly, if neighbors have questions such as, how long are you going to be here? Hey, I've got this really important thing this day. Can you work with me? We'll be able to talk with them, provide them information, and figure out what we can do to try to work with any constraints that they have.
Okay. And then you did mention the link. I'm going to try to access that link and to show like a short snippet of that pile driving video.
Great.
If I'm able to. Can you all be able to see and hear that?
This is a demonstration of installation that is actually demonstrating the pile driving equipment itself. So that was the pile going in, and as you see, it now moves along. And this also shows how the piles are going directly into the ground without any concrete, which allows them to be removed later on.
Okay, let me go ahead and pause it. Just wanted to show that one beam being driven in. So it looks like it takes less than a minute to have each one of those beams driven into the ground. Would that be the standard? Is this video representative of the standard process with respect to the pile driving work?
Yes, this video is typical of the process that I have seen. I will say that, site conditions vary. This was obviously a nice flat level part of the site with existing grass. Sometimes you do have to build on a hill or an area that has been graded. Sometimes there may be subsurface conditions that you're dealing with. So I can't say that this is what every single post driving looks like, but for a typical site, this is representative, yes.
Okay. And just as an observation, I noticed that the operator of the equipment had earmuff on, but that the workers who were holding up the beams, I don't know if they were or weren't, but if they didn't have the large over the ear earmuffs on. Have you been to a work site that when the pile driving process has been ongoing?
As I mentioned, our company does not manage the construction process of the projects, and I've been to a site where construction is going on, but I have not personally been to a site when the pile driving was going on. I've only been to it when they were putting the panels onto the posts. I believe that's true. It may have been a while ago, but I noticed that too. I noticed that the workers didn't have ear protection, and I was curious about that too. This was just a video I found online. I would hope that the workers would all have ear protection, but I did notice that too, that only the operator had the ear protection on.
Okay. With respect to decommissioning, I know that Carolina Solar or Horseshoe Bend Solar had provided, and I'm not sure was as part of the mitigation measure or as part of discovery, explained what the decommissioning process would entail. Would Carolina Solar, Horseshoe Bend Solar commit to formalizing the decommissioning process as part of a decommissioning plan and submitting that to the siting board?
Yes, we did. We had a section in the mitigation measures on decommissioning. Let's see. It may have been something that we filed supplementally. But yes, we are. Oh, well, there's the retro. Yes, we are happy to provide the decommissioning process and decommissioning plan. The positive thing about these projects that we found is that there's so much value in the metals that are within the project. There's a lot of copper wiring and aluminum, steel. Over 90% of everything in the solar project, in terms of the solar panels and racks, is recyclable. And there is a lot of value in those metals that actually offsets most, if not all, of the cost of their removal.
And I know that as part of that, Horseshoe Bend Solar would commit to, I believe, removing any subsurface facilities as well. And I've forgotten how far down, whether it's 3 or 4 feet, removing all of those subsurface structures. And also, if I recall, returning the land to as reasonably close as possible to prior to the development of the solar facility. Is that also correct?
That is correct. Yeah, we've committed to removing everything under the ground. A lot of the copper wiring that's the most value is actually in the conduits in the ground. So that's something the projects want to do anyway. Where land has been graded or trees have been removed, obviously we don't plan to regrade any land back to its original condition. But I think typically, we are reducing grade and therefore could be said to be improving actually the grade of the land. So we won't regrade, but yes, the equipment will be removed. And the landowner typically, the landowner can decide whether they want the roads to remain or whether they want the roads to be decompacted.
Okay. And I know that Greene County doesn't have any ordinances with respect to facilities such as Horseshoe Bend Solar. Has there been any consideration by Horseshoe Bend with respect to any financial assurance, providing the county with any financial assurance with respect to decommissioning?
There is not. As I mentioned, we are happy to provide an engineering study that shows this, but that the values of the materials are equal or more to the cost of their removal, and that provides the financial assurance for decommissioning. Basically, the solar project has a financial incentive to go in and remove those materials because they're going to get more back in the recycling value than it's going to cost to remove. So that's the reason that we did not provide financial assurance.
Okay. Would Carolina Solar be open to doing that?
Yeah, I've actually just faced this question on a project here in North Carolina. Some counties in North Carolina require it, some don't. The financial cost of a bond like that is actually quite high, because you have to hold it over the lifetime of the project. It can be usually as high as your property tax payments. So it really does add quite a substantial economic burden onto the project for something that we, of course, don't feel is necessary because there's this financial incentive to decommission. I think in cases where that financial incentive has been required, we typically ask that it take into consideration the salvage value. So that either the bond would be for the net amount of the cost to remove minus the salvage value, or for some percent, typically we propose like 25% of the gross cost to remove, because we know that the salvage value is going to be there. So it's not something we've proposed, and if it were to be imposed on the project, we really try to avoid having to post a bond for the entire operating life of the project for the entire gross cost of removal without taking into consideration any salvage value. Another option I've heard about is, it needs to be added at year, 10 or something, because you just know that the first 10 years of operation, at least, it's not going to be built and then immediately abandoned. There's just too much value has gone into the project. And the power purchase agreement also is typically at least 10 years, if not 15 or 20 years, providing a guaranteed stream of revenue that will, mean the project won't be abandoned.
Okay. And just a couple of questions. That would be a post-hearing data request question. The first is, with respect to, and this is in regarding the response from Horseshoe Bend to Wells Engineering's final report on the local, state, and federal permitting requirements for impacts of water bodies that are on the solar facility site. Could Horseshoe Bend, as a post-hearing data request, provide additional information regarding the permitting requirements and the steps that will be taken by Horseshoe Bend to comply with those particular requirements?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, yeah. The U.S. Army Corps regulates waters of the U.S. and they've been to this site actually and have confirmed our wetland delineation report, which I think we provided in a post in a response to a question. So the U.S. Army Corps is part of that regulation process. Usually the state has some roles to play, but we can prepare a detailed set of information for you on that.
Okay, that'd be great. Also, as a post-hearing data request, and this is in response also from Horseshoe Bend to the Wells Engineering final report, and it was sponsored by Kirkland Appraisals addressing the property value impact. And there were two studies that were relied upon by Kirkland Appraisals. One was the University of Texas at Austin, the 2018 property value impact study, and then the University of Rhode Island was dated, I believe, September. It was late 2020. Could Horseshoe Bend Solar provide copies of those two studies as well?
We are happy to. I'm sorry we didn't do that already.
It was discussed, but the studies weren't provided. Those are all the questions I have. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I noticed that Commissioner Matthews joined us, Ms. Harkrader, sometime after you initially began your opening remarks. In these proceedings, Judge Frank, we allow the local representatives or board members to ask questions first. I don't see that Mr. Sidebottom is with us this morning, unless he's in the same room with you. Do you know if Mr. Sidebottom is present, Judge Frank?
I've not had conversation with Mr. Sidebottom. No, he's not with me, but I don't know of any objections that he would have. He's not expressed those to me, nor have I heard any objection from anyone else here in Greene County. There's been a lot of conversation and so forth, questions asked, and I think everybody is very comfortable at this point.
All right, after each witness testifies, Judge Frank, we give every member of the siding board has an opportunity to ask questions. So we'll begin with you. Do you have any questions to ask of Ms. Harkrader?
I don't think I do at this time. I think I've asked, kind of went through solid, but got to Carson one way or another. I got all my questions answered. So
Okay, thank you.
I want to apologize up front. I've got another meeting in about 4 minutes that I need to get to, and I apologize. I don't mean to be rude. I'd like to stay on and listen, but I need to hop off if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine. We'll, at some point in the next few weeks, a staff member, Mr. Nguyen, probably will get in touch with you, and we'll have a post-hearing meeting where we can discuss whatever issues there are that have to be finally determined, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thanks, okay.
Mr. Rowland, any questions?
I do not have any questions.
Okay. Mr. Lyons?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just a couple. Good morning, Ms. Harkrader. Juan actually asked you about something I was going to bring up with the waters of the U.S. and it's a fairly substantial list there of disturbance to some streams, ephemeral and intermittent. So it's good that we get that information in the data request. But also, I noticed on the footprint of where the solar arrays would go, and this may This may be a little broad in terms of about looking at an aerial on an overlay, but it looks like there's going to be perhaps some woodland areas disturbed or some trees taken out. Is that actually the case, or is that not accurately depicted on that?
Yes, that is correct. I do expect on this project, there will be trees removed.
Okay. With that in mind, and I know it's not a requirement under the Phase 1 environmental assessment, nor the cumulative environmental assessment under 224, but has there been any consideration of sensitive species, particularly bats, in terms of removing some of that tree canopy? Have you all thought about that?
You know, we did a NEPA report. We did not get NEPA concurrence at this stage, but we have done a NEPA report. I know they looked into species. I believe at this site, in terms of species, we actually did a special survey for mussels in the streams because there was some type of mussel that's in this Green River area. I don't remember anything specific about bats, but I can certainly get back to you about that.
Okay, I just bring to your attention, it's not very well known at this point in time, so I take the opportunity to try to get it out there for the public. But the Kentucky Office of Nature Reserves has a Kentucky Biological Assessment Tool. It's available on our website, the cabinet's website. It just requires a login and a password, and then you can overlay your project on known areas that Nature Preserves has cataloged over the years to see if there is potentially any sensitive areas that you may be encroaching upon. I doubt it, but it may be a good exercise to go through that and just check. The other question I would have regards the EPA, is there an update on the status of that? I read in the data request that was being worked upon. Is there any update on that?
I'm sorry.
Power purchase.
Oh, the power purchase agreement. Yeah, like I said, there is a lot of interest in from companies with operations in Kentucky for the power, but the power purchase agreement is not signed at this stage.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chairman Chandler, questions?
I have no questions, Chairman. Thank you.
Dr. Matthews, questions?
I don't have any questions, thank you. And apologies for being a little late.
I just have, I have two or three. I guess in terms of the noise level, because I don't know, and I don't know if you know, how long it would take for construction and pile driving in the area of these homes that are within 150 feet or 300 feet of the construction. Do you have any idea how long that would take?
You know, that's a good question. As I mentioned in the sound table, you can see that logically, as the pile driving gets further and further away, the sound level diminishes. Mr. Chairman, I don't have information on, for example, how long will it take the pile drivers to move from 150 feet next to this home to at least 300 feet away. But I think that's something that we could try to put together. It is, of course, going to depend on soil conditions, weather conditions, all kinds of site conditions, but I think we could try to put together at least a range for this project for these homes of, you know, how long is the pile driver likely to be within, 300 feet of each home?
Yeah, I'd appreciate if you would do that. I mean, if we knew you have a layout, and so you could scale, obviously, the distance, and you know how many holes or how many piles would have to be driven, and then knowing the time, I think it's important. I know it hasn't, I don't know if it's been raised, I guess it has, maybe in the Wells report or the other consultants, but we keep hearing in these cases that some 1974 EPA study indicated that decibel levels of 55 or above could be detrimental to or have an adverse effect on health of individuals, who are exposed to those sounds. So, I mean, at levels of 95 decibels, I think a homeowner basically could be uncomfortable, especially depending on the time this activity occurred. And I apologize, I know this is in your filings, but do you anticipate working 7 days a week or 12 hours a day? Could you comment on that?
Yes, let me see. Okay, working hours. Could I call in some help on working hours? I
Yeah,
forgot
yes,
my-
you could. Yeah, please do. Because I think at some point, with, at least in the areas, limited areas where we're going to be that close to these homeowners, there needs to be some kind of limit on the time or a specific time when this pile driving activity would take place.
Yeah, I very much understand that concern. The one thing I will say is that limiting the hours that the pile driving can take place obviously does not limit the total number of hours that pile driving needs to take place. It just will make it stretch out over a longer period of time.
No, excuse me, I mean, limiting the hours the pile driving would take place within a certain scale distances from these particular homes, not the entire project.
Okay.
I mean, it's, you say, well, we're going to start work at 6 or 7 a.m., and we're going to go till 7 or 8 in the evening. Yeah, there are limits. In this state, we have a lot of highway construction in mountainous areas, and blasting is always limited to certain times of day, and the homeowners are always given a schedule to know so they can be at the grocery store or someplace else when those things occur. So that's all I'm saying is I would appreciate if you could provide the information as to the length of time and the number of basically the structures that need to be placed in the ground so that we can have some protection for the homeowner that won't unduly interfere with the construction or lengthen the time. We just do it in an area where these people who aren't getting the benefit of the project but have investment in their homes and like to have some quiet time so that we know that they're maybe interfered with, but that their lives won't be subject to undue interference. Okay? Now, the other thing that I wanted to ask is, at some point in time, I know your company, and I'm sure you do your best to be a good neighbor, but it's a business. And in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you may sell this facility. Isn't that true? You could sell it, assign your leases, and sell this Horseshoe Bend facility to someone else.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So I think it's important that whatever conditions we have here, that any assignment or sale that you make has to be binding upon a purchaser. You wouldn't have any objection to that. I suppose you'd assume that would be the case, correct?
Yes, we would assume that to be the case, and actually we would prefer that because then the company that's coming in knows exactly what to expect and knows exactly what they need to evaluate. So
Right.
yes, that's fine.
Yeah, and of course the local community, Judge Frank's the group. He may not be judge then, but community needs to know what to expect also. So I think I just think that's better for everyone. And I don't have any further questions.
Your Honor,
Yeah.
excuse me, could I make one statement about that last point?
Yes, you may, Mr. Gardner.
It is once the certificate is issued, that any sale of the assets or the company has to come back before the siting board where you all look at the environmental and financial record of the transferee. So it will be coming back, and I assume and assume you all would look at that. And additionally, in a prior case, even before the certificate was issued, we put the commission on notice that there was a new company and that it did have the financial wherewithal. It wasn't for Horseshoe Bend, it was another.
Okay. All right, Mr. Osterloh, any questions?
Maybe just one follow-up related to decommissioning. You mentioned a lot of the financial incentives or the financial incentive, Ms. Hartwriter, to decommissioning for projects. But there's also a contractual requirement with the landowners. Isn't that true?
That is correct.
Okay. Anything else you want to add, Ms. Hartwriter?
The leases, have been provided to the siting board and under confidential filing, so that decommissioning language is in there, and we'd be happy to point you to the correct clause. Mr. Chairman, I did just want to comment on noise, and I very much appreciate, your concern and understand, your concern. The reason that the, solar companies are wanting less restrictions on time is simply, as you know, the construction contracts, if working hours are limited, it just increases costs. So that's it. That's the reason. But we do want to be good neighbors, and we appreciate your concern. I mentioned our sound and traffic study, that's attachment F of the site assessment report. It says, during the construction phase, sound level impacts at 300 feet, so that's in our table, that's the 85 dBA, would be approximately equivalent to the sound level produced by the use of a household hairdryer. So just wanted to mention that that table may be helpful for you as you consider this.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I understand, and I made over the years of my private law practice a very good living representing companies. I always represented the company, and we always wanted to be a good neighbor. But many times we weren't a good neighbor, especially once we got what we wanted. So all I want to do is see that local homeowners, the citizens, to the extent that we can, get some protection, and at the same time, not unduly interfere with your ability to construct the project in a timely way and as efficiently and with as much cost effectiveness for you as possible, okay? So it is a balancing project, and everybody has to give a little, all right? Anything else, Mr. Nguyen, any questions?
No further questions.
Any other commissioners, any other siting board members have any questions for Ms. Hartwriter? Okay, thank you, Ms. Hartwriter. You may be excused. Mr. Osterloh, you want to call your next witness?
Yes, our next witness is Solomon Van Meter.
Okay, Mr. Van Meter, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, Mr. Osterloh?
Thank you. Solly, would you please state your name for the record?
I'm Solomon Van Meter,
And what is your business address?
450 Old Vine Street, Suite 300, Lexington, Kentucky, 40507.
Can you describe to the siting board what your role is with this Horseshoe Bend project?
I am designated as a community representative for Carolina Solar. I do community and local government relations work.
Okay. And I know there were several community outreach related questions to Ms. Hartwriter. Anything else you want to add on that front, or would you just what do we want to see if the siting board members and staff have questions?
Well, I have been for over a year and a half doing this work, and because of COVID, I've been the primary person doing what in-person meetings we have done. They have been fairly limited, but I did meet first with Judge Frank September 26th of 2019, and I've probably met with him 10 times and spoken with him twice that many times over the last year and a half, as well as people in the local government there, all the landowners, Mr. Meadows, who is the one property owner right in the middle of the project. I have met with him in person in a socially distanced play. I've also met with another additional adjoining landowner and several other neighbors that are not adjoining but nearby that I've met with in person in this, over this course of this year and a half.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Van Meter is available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nguyen?
Just a couple of questions. Good morning, Mr. Van Meter.
Hey, Quan.
You mentioned that you met with a couple of the non-participating landowners. Is that what I heard you to say?
I have, and it's well, Anthony Meadows, who we've talked about before, is the one that's the most concerned. He's the one right there at the intersection of Jim Meadows Road and the DAR Cemetery Road. And he owns quite a bit of property there, as well as having a home there.
Okay. And did he reach out to you or to Horseshoe Bend Solar first, or did you reach out to him proactively?
Horseshoe Bend gave me very specific instructions. We went to him first. This was a very high concern of Carson's in particular.
Okay. Was that because of the distance to the boundary or to the solar facility?
Yeah, it's pretty obvious of the location of his house. And on this and other projects that I've worked with Carolina Solar on, these unique properties that are kind of close to the project always get special attention.
Okay. But with respect to the any of the other non-participating landowners that you came in contact with, were those as a result of those landowners reaching out to Horseshoe Bend Solar, or was that as a result of Horseshoe Bend Solar going to them?
Let's see, there's Adam Davis, who is in the, adjoins actually this project on the northeast corner. I initially approached him, but he continued the relationship. I think that he was actually interested in having some of his land included in the project.
Okay. And
The others, excuse me, to continue to answer your question, the others were mostly my outreach to them. I'm sure that we got, I can't remember specifically, I'm sure we got other calls from neighboring landowners that were interested in participating.
okay. So I mentioned to Ms. Harkerader that I believe that there are 36 non-participating landowners. Now, there may be more than 36 parcel, but I believe there are 36 non-participating landowners that are adjacent to the proposed Horseshoe Bend Solar facility. Ms. Harkerader mentioned that there was no proactive efforts to reach out to those non-participating landowners. Do you recall those questions being asked of Ms. Harkerader?
I do, and that's correct, except that I believe that she might have forgotten about Adam Davis.
Okay. So do you know why, and I understand that prior to the public meetings, that notice was provided to, these adjoining landowners, as well as, notice being, or information being provided through the local newspaper. But was there a reason why the non-participating adjoining landowners were not contacted by the company?
Well, of course they were of course contacted by the company, but we didn't have a lot of in-person meetings with anybody really during the last year and a half. As I say, I just got started on this project myself in September of 19, and COVID kind of limited our in-person meetings. I will say though that the way this particular project and the relationship with the adjoining landowners has ended up sort of working out is the property owners that are in the project, in this particular project, are, as Carson mentioned, most of them live right, maybe all of them live there in the project area and have regular relationships with all of their neighbors. And so, we spoke to the landowners that are in the project quite regularly and would have been tuned in to anything that was a concern.
Okay.
Does that answer your question at all?
It does, thank you.
Okay.
Those are all the questions I have, Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Rowland, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Lyons?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, is on mute there. No, I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Vice Chairman Chandler, questions?
No questions for Mr. Van Meter. Thank you.
Dr. Matthews, questions?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
I have no questions either. Mr. Osterloh, anything else? Okay. All right, Mr. Van Meter, thank you for your testimony, and you may be excused.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Osterloh, you have, one more witness? Would you like to call that witness?
That's correct. Next witness is Dr. Paul Coombs.
Okay, Dr. Coombs, would you, you're on mute, so you'll need to unmute and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm, under penalty of perjury, that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Osterloh?
Thank you. Dr. Coombs, would you please state your name for the record?
So I'm Paul Coombs.
And you are a professor emeritus at the University of Louisville, correct?
Of economics, yes, that's true.
Okay. What is your business address?
3604 Trail Ridge Road, Louisville, 40241.
And you've testified before the Public Service Commission, either in written or oral format, correct?
Yes, both.
Can you describe to the siting board what your role was in related to this Horseshoe Bend project?
Yes, so Carolina Solar Energy contacted me last fall and asked me to estimate the economic and fiscal impact of the project on the local community.
And you prepared a written economic impact report that was included in the application materials for Horseshoe Bend, correct?
I did. It's about 5 pages.
Can you elaborate on why you believe this Horseshoe Bend project will be a net economic benefit for Greene County?
Sure. There's really two main benefits here from an economics and fiscal point of view. First is, we've been discussing it now for an hour and a half, is the construction impact. There's likely to be around 150 direct construction jobs over the course of 8 to 12 months. They'll probably average somewhere around $50,000 a year across all the different occupations, which generates a payroll of about $7.5 million over that basically a year of construction. There will be some modest spinoff activity according to the models that I've looked at that will generate some spinoff activity in Greene County. So I estimate the total impact would be about 186 jobs from the basic direct jobs of 150. It would go up to 186. And the payroll impact would be a little over $9 million. The second benefit to the county that we've also been discussing are the pilot taxes, the pilot payments that are in lieu of the property taxes that would have come from the project if there wasn't an IRB. So, and they amount to, well, we've already discussed it quite extensively. It's about $1.62 million over the subsequent 40 years. So averaging over $40,000 a year. And as Carson, I believe, pointed out an hour ago, That's multiples of the property tax revenues that the county would receive from the existing use of the land. So those are the two main benefits that I see from the project to the community.
Great, thank you, Dr. Coombs. Mr. Chairman, before I offer Dr. Coombs up for examination, I can't recall if I moved for admission of Exhibit 1 or just for identification. So at this time, I would like to formally move for that admission of Exhibit 1.
Okay, sustained.
And Dr. Coombs is available for questions.
Mr. Nguyen, cross-examination?
No question.
No questions. Mr. Rowland, questions?
Just a couple questions, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Coombs, so you expect 186 jobs, but 150 of those are directly related to the construction and should only last for the remainder of the construction. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit more about so there's 36 extra spin-off jobs. Can you describe more in detail what the nature of those spin-off jobs?
I could sort of speculate. This is obviously from a model that's been custom fit to the Greene County economy. I won't get into a long lecture on input-output models, but basically these models have the capacity and the detail to estimate the amount that each sector of an economy purchases from every other sector for a given project, and it has a 500 sector detail, so you can predict how much a construction project like this would purchase from local electricians, hardware stores, all of the sort of inter-industry supply chain things that may or may not be available in the county. And the second part of it is the spending due to the employees' compensation from the construction phase. So folks will take their paychecks and spend some money on restaurants, retail expenditures at the local Walmart, et cetera. So those are all built into these models, and I think they're pretty reliable and consistent, and they're certainly customized to the local community, so that, for example, if there's not a hospital in a county, it would predict that there's no hospital expenditures, right? If there is, it would absorb those. If there's no hotel, it would skip that and assume that those services had to be provided outside the county. And that's a short version of a long lecture on how input-output models work and why multiplier effects or the spin-off effects may be large or small. In this case, they're very, very small. The job multiplier is in the neighborhood of only 1.2, but that's because it's a fairly thin economy in a rural county like that, where you do not have a lot of high-end professional services or manufacturing to provide the industrial supplies, but also not a lot of retail to absorb the household spending impact. So it's positive, it's net positive, but it's not a large spin-off impact in this case.
Thank you. And for those spin-off jobs, is there a time frame estimate for those jobs will be in place? Is it for the life of the project, or is there any sort of time frame you could put on those spin-off jobs?
Okay, sorry, I may have confused you there. So everything we've been talking about is related to the construction period.
Okay.
Which is only a year roughly. It's not anticipated that there'll be more than 2 or 3 operational jobs.
Sure. For
the next 30 years or 40 years. And it was so small, I didn't bother to, and in fact, the models don't even have any detail on the operations. There's a sector for it, but it's void in the models because there's been no history. And so there's no economic data to estimate the spin-off impacts of the operations jobs.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Lyons, questions?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman Chandler, questions?
I have no questions for Dr. Coombs. Thank you.
Dr. Matthews, any questions?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
I have one question, but I don't have any questions for Dr. Coombs, but I would like to ask one question of Ms. Hartrader. Ms. Hartrader, I know you indicated that your company would not actually do the construction work. Is that correct? Do you know who will? Can you identify the company that will be responsible for the construction?
So we have disclosed in our application that the likely company that will be the long-term owner and that will be responsible for construction is NG North America. That was included in our application materials. That is not finalized, and so we will notify the siding board when that transfer occurs. It's anticipated to occur, but it's not finalized yet. It is expected that NG North America, assuming they are the company that will build and own the project, will hire a engineering, procurement, and construction subcontractor to manage the construction of the project, but they typically use, an on-site NG manager as well.
Okay. And has this company, I assume this company has done construction work for you in the past?
Yes. We
And-
have worked with NG on 4 of those 8 large projects of the same size, the Horseshoe Bend that I mentioned in the beginning.
And do they specialize in this type of work? I mean, is this something that they devote themselves to primarily?
They do. They're a global utility company, and in North America, their primary focus is on renewable energy, wind and solar. They do have, natural gas and other forms of energy that they have projects in as well, but renewable energy is a major focus of the company.
Well,
And they have multiple projects across the country of this size.
Well, the reason I ask, and I'm sure we may have a post-hearing data request that may, I guess, require, in order to be answered, for you to contact the company and ask them so that you can say, they told me this. But I guess in the last solar case we had, maybe last week, I asked the question of were there products available, or were there means of construction in terms of pile driving which could reduce noise? And we're told, yes, there are things. You could have a structure. Presumably, you could have cushioning material or something on wheels that you moved. I don't know what there is, but I'd like to know if there is something that can be done to limit noise, all right, such as something that could be moved from while in front of between the home or homes and the pile driving activities that perhaps could be moved, and what the approximate cost would be. I mean, something like that, whatever it would be, if it was $10,000, $15,000, might not be that much, would be a lot less than limiting construction times if that could be done. So if you could find that out, it would be helpful in this case. And Mr. Osterloh and Mr. Gardner, you seem to have almost all of the solar facility cases in this state. You might think about that, at least say we've got this guy on the siding board who keeps razzing us all the time about noise, and see if there is something available that might benefit both the company and the homeowner as well. So thank you. I have nothing else. And Mr. Coombs, you may be excused. Mr. Osterloh, is there anything else, any other witness that you would care to present?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Nguyen, any member of the siding board, any other questions or comments concerning this matter?
No, Your Honor.
All right, there was, I guess, we're going to have 2 or 3 post-hearing data requests. Mr. Nguyen, when must the final order be entered in this case? Do you know?
June 11th.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, June 11th.
Oh, June 11th.
Sorry.
I apologize. I didn't. Okay. And how long will you need, by what date, I guess this is April 22nd, can you have the data request prepared?
I can have it out tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
All right, if you get these tomorrow morning, Mr. Osterloh and Mr. Gardner, reasonably, how much time will you need to provide an answer?
I mean, they didn't seem to be overly substantial in the amount of materials that we need to get together. I mean, we could certainly get it in 2 weeks by May the 7th, if that's permissible.
That'd be
and possibly
fine.
before.
Sure, that's acceptable. We'll enter an order, and if somehow you need more time, all you have to do is file, a 2-sentence motion, and we'll see what we can do about that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else, thank you, Ms. Harkwater. Enjoyed your presentation. I thought it was very good, and all of your witnesses, and so if there's nothing else, then this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.